So I've had some questions about why do some transits give their results and other times they don't? Because we all get these monthly reports or yearly reports where a person or an astrologer will talk about this transit's happening, so therefore you'll have success in career, or you'll meet that special someone. Yet you get to that point and it doesn't happen. Well, there's a couple reasons why. And in order to understand whether a transit's going to work for you or not, requires that you know or do two things. Number one, it's getting an astrologer to accurately assess what is going on within your chart as a whole. So what is the potential within your chart? Once they do that, if a transit's occurring that's going to bring that into your life, it's more likely to happen. For example, if someone is a successful business person, and let's say their 10th house is Gemini, and so they're a successful business person, so usually they have success in career. And now that we know that, we can usually say that when Mercury or any other supportive planet transits a person's 10th house, they're going to have a lot of opportunities, be able to work hard, get a lot done, and have success within their career because it's in their birth chart. It's already there. It's a possibility. And the same thing goes with love, relationships. You need to look to see what is the capacity for yourself or others, if you're an astrologer, to have love and relationships in general. Some charts just don't support it. It's just not there. Other charts, a person, they go from one relationship to the other. They're never not in a relationship because that indication for a relationship in their natal chart, their birth chart, is strong. It's just a natural predisposition they have. So every time Venus goes through their 7th house, well, sure, they're having lots of sex, or sure that they're, schmoozing with someone that they love, or they're meeting someone new. So that transit makes sense because we know that in their natal chart, the possibility is already there. And so if you have an accurate assessment of your birth chart, then it's easier to see when transits work out. And I made this mistake countless times. When I was first doing predictive astrology, I would see transits and I would say, why, surely this is going to be great. I'd give these great predictions, or surely this is going to be terrible. And they'd write me back a few months later or a year later, however long those predictions were, and they'd say, that time you mentioned, it really wasn't as bad as you said it was going to be. Or that time, I didn't meet anyone, or nothing great happened with my career. And I would always scratch my head and wonder, why is that the case? It didn't take me long to figure it out, that the chart has to support it first. So once I started integrating that thought process, these transits, these predictions, they worked out more often than not. Now, the other aspect, which is specific to Vedic astrology, is the idea of dashas, or the time cycles. Because, for example, if you are in a time period of your 10th house lord, and your 10th house lord is very well supported, which is your activity, your status within the world, then that's showing that you have the natural capacity to be successful and have good status. Now, if a transit occurs while you're in that dasha, you've got it in your birth chart, the dasha is occurring, a transit is coming along to support it, well, that's when you're going to have the biggest things occurring within your life that are big moments where you say, yes, okay, that makes sense. And that's why, with transits and dashas, if you just use one, you're not going to get usually the best results. You might get lucky, but the key is knowing what is already promised in your birth chart. Now, the second thing that we have to consider is the idea, if you're not an astrologer and you haven't studied astrology extensively and you can't really read a birth chart well, then it's just looking back over your life. Have you typically had success in career? Have you typically had success in relationships? Have you typically had difficulty with vehicles? Have you typically gone on adventures and traveled a lot? If you can look back over your life and get a sense of how has it been usually for you, then when someone tells you there's this transit occurring, and they're saying, oh, you're going to have a wonderful love affair, and you think back and you think, I've never really had any love affairs, more than likely it's not going to happen. If you think back over your life and someone says, oh, you're going to have a horrible car crash, and you think back and you think, well, I've never really been in a car crash except that one time someone slightly bumped me, more than likely you're not going to be in a terrible car crash. So the point being, astrologers are extremely helpful in this regard. But if you just pay attention to your life, that's the best way to do it. The trouble with that is being really honest with yourself, because we all have these wants and these desires and these cravings. And so if we're really craving something, really hoping something's going to happen, well, then you might ignore the obvious. And that's one of the things that an astrologer can help you with if you're willing to go that route. Because a good astrologer can really look at the potentials of your chart and say, you know, I think this focus on relationship might not be that great of an idea, but career is wonderful. Or, you know, maybe this idea of traveling around the world doesn't really look like it's supported, but it looks like you can make a great home for yourself where you are. So these are the things that if you come to an astrologer and you are sincerely wanting to know what is your potential, just baseline potential, without you doing remedial measures, without you actively working through your issues or getting coaching to work through your issues so that you can change your potential, because you can, and that might be the topic of my next video. It's really having the capacity to listen to what an astrologer has to say and ask yourself, is this true for me? Sometimes what an astrologer says might not be true for you at all. You might get an astrological reading and they say, yeah, I don't see you traveling around the world, but you think back to yourself and you think, oh, well, I volunteered in this third world country, and I traveled to this country when I was in high school. And you might think of all the times you traveled, and if they say you're not going to do it, that doesn't really make sense with your past experience. So never underestimate your past experience, your own knowledge of who you are and yourself. Just because an astrologer says something does not mean it's true. It might, but this is one thing I do tell my clients, is that, you know what, I'm going to do my best reading your chart, but from the time you're born until now, you've had plenty of time to work through issues, to deal with certain things, to make different choices. So I have a sense I'm going to be mostly accurate, because I usually am. But I'm fine if you tell me I'm not. Because I know, number one, that we have free will, and number two, that we can't see everything. At least I can't. And I don't know any astrologers that can. And I talk to a lot of astrologers. Good friends with a lot of astrologers. So we need to be realistic about this. But this is the way that you can figure out how is a transit that someone predicts for you, or that's something that you hear about within like a monthly report or a yearly report, if it's actually going to happen. Have an astrologer assess your chart. If the baseline possibility is there, great. It's probably going to happen. If you've thought back over your life and you realize that, yeah, you know, I've never really experienced that before, so why should I experience it now? Probably true. So this is an excellent way to determine, in a general fashion, whether a predicted transit is probably going to work for you or not. Okay, thank you.